3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another week of the Let's Dig In podcast. I'm your host, Chef Rich Rosendale, and we are joined with our co-hosts, Christopher Rieloff and Rachel Barnett. And this week, I'm super excited. We have a good friend of the show, Dan Ahdoot. Dan is a stand-up comic, actor, producer, writer. He's a national headliner. He's been on The Tonight Show several times, and you're probably going to recognize him from, if you watch Netflix, Cobra Kai, the hit show right now, super popular. Dan is just a fantastic talent. We had a great conversation with him, and he also has the top food podcast in the country right now, Green Eggs and Dan. So check that out too. So without further ado, let's dig in with Dan Ahdoot. Dan, for everybody out there, a lot of people recognize you from obviously from the Cobra Kai, which we're going to be talking about, and the other shows over the years you've been involved with, and a lot of the stand-up, which I'm sure we want to learn a little bit about that, about how that's changed over last year. But if you could just give everybody, our listeners, a lot of culinary, foodie people in our space, kind of give them a background and overview of how you got started and what all that you do.
Yeah, sure. So I started doing stand-up comedy 20 years ago. I started in New York, and then I started to tour around the country. And actually, let me try to give this. I want to try to give my career history with a little food parallel history.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, so I was coming up in New York in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, which was when there was actually an interesting little food boom going on in New York. I think it was when Batali opened Poe and Babbo. Can we talk about Batali anymore? I don't know. But he opened those restaurants. They existed. And then and then it started a little like food revolution, with Wiley Dufresne and all these guys were having these very interesting restaurants. And I was all about it. Every penny that I was making off of open mics were going to, April
Really?
Bloomfield. And then I started to tour, and for 3 years, I was the top booked college comedian in the country. So I was doing like 175 shows a year.
Wow.
I went to 49 states, traveling like crazy. And I would go to all the fun restaurants in whatever town I went to. And so after that first year of touring, I came back to New York and I was like, man, I'm so burnt out. I do not want to do stand-up for the summer. I don't want to do any comedy. I want to do cooking. I want to enroll at the French Culinary Institute, just take some classes for the summer. And at the time, the Spotted Pig was my regular joint because I lived down the block from it. And all of the managers there were like, dude, just come, instead of going there, just come here, work in the kitchen. It'll be free and you'll learn a lot more. So for 3 summers, I was basically the kitchen intern at the Spotted Pig. Which kind of taught me,
Whoa, I had no idea
how to cook and stuff. Yeah. And then I, then moved to LA and started to do more TV stuff. And I got on a Disney show, which ended up becoming, I was supposed to be on one episode and it became a kind of a breakout star of the show. Long story short, if you got any kids out there, they know who Falafel Phil is, okay? And then I started just doing more writing as well and started selling TV shows, and that became my gig. And then, just let's quickly flash forward to today. I got Cobra Kai a couple of years ago, and it was interesting because it was a YouTube show at the time and nobody was watching it. So imagine this show that is the worldwide hit being out there for 2 years and no one's watching it. I mean, we were just like yelling at our friends, like, you guys, you have to watch this. They're like, what is it on? I'm like, YouTube. They're like, nah, I'm good, man. So thankfully, Netflix gave it a new life. And then I just got on a new show, which is coming out next week it's out already, right? When is this airing?
Yeah, right. It's out already. Love it.
I had to like predict the rest of my career for the next 3 months. And then there was the sex scandal, which I swear to God, no, it was, I'm on a show on Netflix called The Crew, which is Kevin James's new sitcom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is very, very exciting. And in the meantime, I wanted to do this podcast about food, which would just be a food podcast that was just like comedic in nature. And I didn't really see it out there, and I pitched it around to everyone, and no one wanted to buy it because they were like, there's no market for this. And I found like a small podcast network that wanted to take a shot at it. And for 2 months last year, we were the #1 food podcast in the country.
Really?
Wow.
It's really fun. We get like celebrities and interview them just based on what's inside their fridge. And every episode starts with a picture of what's inside their fridge, which I put on blast on my Instagram. So it's very fun. You get to see, famous people's fridges. It's called Green Eggs and Dan. But what I've realized, and Rich, you can speak to this, is that the better the chefs are, the more awful the fridges are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's true.
I mean,
yeah, I would agree.
It's crazy. Like these people who don't cook at all have these like, Martha Stewart type fridges. And then like Ignacio Matos of Estella has like a fridge that looks like a college kid who ran out of money 3 years ago and is like in debt and doesn't know that moldy food is bad for you.
How ironic. That's so funny. I love that. So very cool. I didn't know the history there with the whole culinary school potential. And that's so interesting.
I've always had a thing for cooking and for eating and for chefs. I mean, when I met you, I was going nuts. So yeah.
So Dan, so here we are, with now having the podcast launched. I mean, did COVID kind of impact like with the whole pandemic, and did that kind of like accelerate like, hey, this is something that I can really put a lot of energy into now? Like, what was kind of the inspiration in doing it? I mean, did you think that this was going to be a good way to kind of network, or right now, voice is huge. I mean, there's more people listening to the podcast than like ever before. What was kind of the original kind of inspiration for kind of getting it started? And did the pandemic accelerate that over the last year?
I'll tell you, and this I think is true to any art or, whatever you want to call it, whatever your passion is. But this was probably the only thing in my career that I did without any, like, I didn't want to get anything out of it. I wasn't doing it for like, to get an in something. Maybe I was doing it to get some free shit sent to me, which, be careful what you wish for.
Right.
But no, man, this was completely done as a passion project. It's kind of like the food side of me has always been something that I've hidden career-wise. Like it's never, because stand-up comics and comedy, like they're not like usually food people. And a lot of food people aren't usually comedy people. So I kind of kept these things separate. And I was like, man, I want to just like join these two forces together. So I literally just did it for fun. I lost money on it, in the first year. But it didn't matter. I was like, this is so great. I get to have these fun conversations, and, you follow your passion and everything else follows, you know what I mean? So like, yes, the networking of it has been awesome. And I've been, up for food stuff, which I've never been up for food stuff, which is cool. So yeah, I mean, it was literally just done. And then in terms of the pandemic kind of, I never did the podcast remotely. Like we would always have to do it in a studio, which was great for the sound quality and all that stuff. But it totally opened us up to getting guests anywhere in the world. Yeah. I mean, we interviewed who was the guy who's one of my favorite like food personalities. His name is Mr. Taster, and he's basically like the Phil Rosenthal of Iran.
Really?
And he just travels around he's like a rock star in Iran, like a food blogger, and he just goes all over to these little hole in the wall restaurants in Iran, which like, you're like, as an Iranian who's never been to Iran, it's like literally like all I care. Like I would love to see all these little places. So we got to interview him from Tehran, which is like I would have never even thought of that possible. So I think it was cool that it opened us up to that. And you know, since pandemic, everyone started to cook a lot more, and their fridges are a lot more stocked. So it's kind of a fun thing to see is like, what do people have in their pandemic fridge? You know, like, what are you gonna put in your fridge if you think the end of the world is coming? A lot of milk, apparently. Everyone thinks that the milk is gonna save them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Dan, a quick question about you were just talking about the Green Eggs and Dan podcast. What is your so far? What has been your favorite episode and why?
Oof, it's like asking me to choose my babies.
Yeah.
You know, I just interviewed. So here's the thing. Like, there's definitely like the comedic ones, and then there's like the foodie ones, and you know, so there's like different categories, I think, and like there's like just the really interesting ones. So I'll choose three. One is like the foodie. My foodie favorite is probably Ruth Reichel. Just being able to nerd out on food with her and pick her brain on stuff was just like a dream come true.
Awesome.
And then the most interesting one I thought was Steve Rinella, he's a hunter conservationalist. He's got a super popular podcast called the Meat Eater Podcast, and he's got a show on Netflix called Meat Eater. And he's all about conscious hunting and you know, hunting for food, and that was a fascinating conversation. I learned so much that I didn't know about. Like, for example, you know, we can't serve game meat in restaurants in America. Wild game. We can serve farmed game, but wild game is off limits. But in Europe, you can. And I always thought that was, man, I was like, Europe has it so much better than we do because, you know, they can get these awesome ingredients in a restaurant. And he was telling me how it's actually a lot better this way for us, because when hunting in America was open to commercialization, I mean, the population of these animals just went to like nearly zero.
Oh, wow.
Like in the late 1800s, a super popular food was to have buffalo tongue. Buffalo tongue was like the thing. it was like the crispy chicken sandwich now. And so, but these hunters would just go out and kill a buffalo and rip the tongue out and then leave the rest of it there. And so,
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I never even thought that, oh, wow, that's what could happen. That's what you could open yourself up to the commercialization of this stuff. So yeah, it was really interesting, eye-opening like that. And then I'd say the funniest one is like, you know, my comedian friends, like Michelle Buteau is just hilarious. And just like, we just give each other shit. And we don't even, I mean, it's just like, it's just so much fun. So I don't know, they all have a little special place in my heart. And then Padma Lakshmi, I was just like hypnotized by her beauty. So like, I wasn't really paying attention, but it was, I enjoyed it a lot.
That's awesome.
That's funny. So are you able to spill the beans on any future guests on your podcast?
Yes, I am. Actually, this week we have someone who's been my favorite. Oh, well, these are past guests. I have to guess. Well, Barack Obama is probably going to be on it. There's some interesting feelers we got out there. You know, we'll see. Tiffany Haddish might be a guest, or I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen. But I did just interview this guy, Frank Prizanzano. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He owns a couple restaurants in New York that have been around forever, like Frank and Supper and Little Frank's. Okay. And since pandemic, he has started basically teaching people how to cook on his Instagram, and his follower count went from about 50,000 to like 180,000 over pandemic. And he likes to teach people the way chefs would teach people. So he doesn't call them recipes, he calls them methods. And they're so much fun to watch, and everyone loves them. And he's such a character. He's just like this brawny Italian, you know, teddy bear of a guy. So yeah, I love him, and I think I think he's doing good in the pandemic, teaching people how to cook.
Yeah,
That's
I feel like
amazing.
we've seen a lot of that. A lot of people, getting online, teaching other people how to cook.
Yeah.
So what else are you doing besides the podcast? Like, what else is keeping you busy? You said you just started or there is a show coming, or
Oh, it's out. It's been out.
Future tense. Is it
It's
now?
been out. It's been renewed for 8 more seasons.
So
Gotta
what
put it
else?
out. Gotta put it out in the universe, guys. We gotta put it
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So tell us what you're doing else. What else to keep busy?
I actually, I've been cooking a lot as well, and just kind of posting fun stuff on Instagram with it. I do have a crazy food project that just got greenlit. And I hate when people say this on podcasts and stuff, but I can't talk about it. But it is very, very exciting. I'll tell you guys off the air about it, but it's very exciting, and it's a dream come true. And when this comes out, you can probably write in the comment section what it is.
That's
Okay.
awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
about that.
we'll definitely at the end of the podcast, we'll definitely ask for where everybody can kind of stay updated with all of this stuff. So
yeah.
Dan, I just want to make a quick stop and go back to the first question that Rich was saying, because I've been watching your videos. I love stand-up comedy, and I would like to ask you, just so everyone knows, where are you coming from, where your family is coming from, and if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Iranian. Please keep listening. I'm Iranian, and that's where my family's from, and it's it factors into my comedy a little bit. It definitely factors into a lot of the podcast episodes. Like, a lot of people don't know about Persian food, which is a cuisine that I'm trying to be a little bit of an ambassador for it, because I think that it should have the same level of respect, not respect necessarily, but notoriety, let's say, as Indian food or Thai food, or it's very different from Arabic food, which is what a lot of people assume it is. And the best way I can describe it is it's a lot like Indian food, but substitute herbs for the spices. So it's super fragrant and really an interesting cuisine. The bummer part about it is that it's one of those grandmother cultures, because it's and I'll explain. I in my cooking pride, I was I'm going to start cooking. I'm only going to cook Iranian food now. I need to represent my people, So I was starting to cook Iranian food, and I was oh shit, the only way you can do this is if you're literally a grandma and have nothing to do the whole day, because it takes a whole day to make one tiny dish. So I'm back to just cooking simple stuff, but it's super labor intensive and very, very delicious.
Dan, is there any chefs in the United States that are kind of cook with that influence, any restaurants, or is there a food town that you think probably really you've seen good representation of that cuisine?
LA is the closest that it gets.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I haven't. Here's the problem. The only Persian restaurants, or the majority of Persian restaurants in America are just kebab restaurants. So you'll have the Persian kebabs, which are so delicious, but that's 5% of the cuisine. You know? It's we do the same thing with Japanese food, where everyone thinks Japanese food is sushi, but that's a small sliver.
Right.
And I think, but there are some chefs who are doing really interesting things. There's a restaurant in Brooklyn called Sofre that is taking kind of elevating Persian food and doing almost the new American treatment to Persian food, which is really, really interesting. And there's a chef whose books are amazing. She's she's the Martha Stewart of Persian cooking. This is the book. It's it's Food of Life, it's called.
Oh, okay.
And it is Najmieh Batman Ghalij. All right, that's her name. It's really hard.
I'm sure she would appreciate that you went through that to do that for us. That's awesome. And actually, I want to get that book now.
Was that one of the product that you got in your podcast?
No, I wish, man. I wish. It's so expensive. You know, it's funny. Just to speak to a little bit of the product placement, the producty stuff. The first time I realized that this podcast is actually doing okay was I reached out to Traeger, you know, the grill company.
Yeah,
right.
Because I was like, hey, I want to get a discount can I get like a discount on a grill? And I will, you know, I'll use your product. And they were like, we loved your videos. We're going to send you a free grill. And
Awesome.
the grill that I wanted was like a $700 grill. They ended up sending me like a $2,000 grill that had like Wi-Fi and like gives you a massage after you're done cooking. It was wild. I am trying to get
amazing.
I'm trying to get an all-clad hookup, but they're not returning my calls.
Well, when they see how dedicated you are with the product, they may change their mind. They're like, hey,
yeah,
That's amazing.
So, yeah, and you know what? I think like over the years too, because obviously like pre-COVID and all over the years, like with all the cooking competitions and stuff that I did and a lot of the traveling, that was like one of the best things about competing was going to all these different places around the world and just tasting their food. And I totally agree. It's like when you're in the United States, like what people know is like an Italian cuisine or the food of India, you know, until you actually go there and taste like street food or in the small towns,
Right.
man, it's like, there's so much, you know, I went to Ecuador a couple of times, like a year ago, and, you know, just all these different places. It's so cool. I mean, you really piqued my interest with that cookbook as well. So I'm kind of curious now.
Man, I forgot about how much you traveled. It must be
yeah.
like, did you slow down the traveling before pandemic anyway, or?
Oh no, it was full throttle. I mean, literally, I was literally in Las Vegas doing a presentation. It was supposed to be for like 1,000 people at Cater Source. And a lot of people started like canceling, even coming out to the actual conference. And we were like watching all of this unfold on the way back home. And even the airports, like, I mean, I remember going back to the airport and it was like there was nobody there. And the Las Vegas was like a ghost town. I'm like, man, this is getting really bad. And then we started seeing people asking for refunds and canceling events. They were asking for refunds for deposits for parties. And it just, you know, it all kind of went downhill from there. But
that sucks, man.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've been recovering and everything, but yeah, I did travel a ton before this. Things are starting to pick up a little bit as far as the travel again, but nothing really outside of the United States. And I used to travel a lot outside the U.S. before this, but I missed that.
Right. Yeah, I bet.
Don't we all?
Yeah, hopefully things get back to some sense of normalcy soon. So Dan, about like with the Cobra Kai, which we want to spend some time talking about just your entertainment experience. How did you actually get involved? You were doing the show on YouTube as well. I mean, you know, how exactly did you get involved in doing a show like that, even the YouTube version in the very beginning?
Yeah, so I know the creators of the show. I've known them for a long time. They're the guys who created Hot Tub Time Machine and Harold and Kumar. And we've known each other for over a decade. And we've always just kind of helped each other career-wise and, you know, looked at each other's stuff. And it was one of these things where they were writing Cobra Kai and they were like, we wrote a role for you and we think you'd be great in it. And I was like, cool. So it was probably one of the easier gigs that I've ever gotten. But you know, there was a lot of work that went behind it. I mean, they've been following my career for a long time, and but it was one of the few things that I didn't actually have to seriously audition for. They had to definitely, you know, pull for me because the execs were like, oh, we don't know. And they were like, no, he's great, which was really nice. But yeah, it was having a good relationship and, you know, and all, you know, I guess they enjoyed my work. So
is the experience like being involved now that obviously it's such a huge show, but when you went to start doing it with Netflix versus when it was like with YouTube, I mean, has the experience changed a lot? Or is it just like, hey, now it just has a different distribution channel?
Well, I'll tell you the craziest thing. The first 3 seasons were all filmed under the YouTube umbrella. So everything that you've seen so far has been shot without the show being on Netflix.
Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the 4th season is going to start filming now. Actually, it's already started filming in Atlanta. That's going to be the first season that's under the Netflix umbrella.
Wow, that's crazy. And it's interesting though that, you know, it was on YouTube for so long and just all of a sudden, boom, it's on Netflix and it's like this massive show. But that's crazy.
Again, imagine my frustration when I'm like, guys, this show exists and no one's watching it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because I feel like there's such a huge audience on YouTube. I mean, I didn't own a TV until June of last year, and all I would watch was YouTube. I wasn't big on TV, so I know that there's like a huge audience for people watching shows or vlogs or whatever on YouTube. So it's just interesting that, you know, you had to beg your friends to watch it.
You know, the other thing though that Netflix does that's great, and I'm gonna hype up Netflix because I'm on 2 shows now and they pay my mortgage. They pay my mortgage. Is that they translated the show into like 60 languages.
Wow.
So they, you know, no other network would do that. That's why it's kind of cool to be on Netflix, because if you were on CBS or on Fox, like they wouldn't do that. They would just kind of, I think, you know, maybe dub it in a couple languages and then subtitle most of the others. But they literally dubbed it in like every language. So, you know, I'm getting like messages on Instagram from people in India. They're like, "We love you." like it's wild.
That's amazing.
So cool.
That's awesome.
So you're filming now, or going to be starting filming in Atlanta?
Yeah.
With Netflix. What's that like right now with the pandemic? Because I just finished working on a movie with Netflix, and the quarantine situation was intense. I mean, we had QR scanners on our car. I lived in Atlanta, but we had to live in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like you could only go to and from the hotel to work. They would fill up your gas tanks. You couldn't stop at the gas station, nothing. So what's it like for you now filming there?
Well, I'll tell you, here's the crazy thing is that the crew, the Kevin James show, we were filming in New York and we were filming during the pandemic. So the pandemic happened. We had an 10 episode order. We filmed 7 episodes. The pandemic hits, and then we stopped. We were the first show back in production on first Netflix show back in production during the pandemic. So all eyes were on us, and it was nuts. Like you said, like we had to quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks, and it wasn't even just like you can just go out for walks in the parking lot. Even it was like you can't leave your door.
Room.
Yeah. Like, which is so funny because you're like, my dream is to always be on a TV show, and suddenly you're on one and you're like, oh, I'm in prison now. And then, getting the swabs, like, we were getting tested towards the end, we were getting tested 5 days a week.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah.
7 times in a week we got
My
tested.
nose did not always look like this, guys. I used to have a little button nose, and now I have this big Jew nose. And I was Protestant before I started the crew. Now I'm an Orthodox Jew. Yeah, so it was a crazy process. I mean, I haven't gone down to Atlanta yet for season 4, but I'm imagining it's going to be the same across the board. I mean, now that you're telling me, it's funny because I was like, oh, maybe in the South it'll be different, like, hey guys, all bets are off.
No, it was pretty intense, but
yeah.
I think the way that Netflix handled it made everybody who was working on the movie around the production made everybody feel so much safer.
Yeah.
I mean, coming out of it now, I'm like, I've got more fear of the virus than I did before I went in.
Yeah.
Because they just made you feel really safe. You were living in this bubble.
Yeah, totally. Oh, so bizarre.
It's kind of neat that there's all this activity like with filming and stuff in Atlanta, we have our event space down there. And when we were first getting that up and running, it was kind of neat for me. I didn't realize at the time, I'm like walking down the street with everybody, and it's like, wham, you're like walking into a TV set. You know, it's like a car ripping down the road, and you hear like fake gunshots. And I mean, it was, and I remember one time coming out and they had like fake snow that was like the entire street was like covered with snow. I was like, what the hell's going on? But it was pretty neat. I think it adds like a whole different kind of energy to Atlanta.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I'll tell you a funny story. Was we had in season 1 of Cobra Kai, there's a scene where there's a billboard of LaRusso Auto with a penis painted, spray painted on it.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so, you know, this was season 1 before the show even came out. So we're trying to keep everything very secret, very under wraps. But they had to put that billboard up in a parking lot in Atlanta, Georgia. So
Really?
people are driving by seeing LaRusso Auto with a penis on it, just looking so confused with like Ralph Macchio on the the billboard. It was very, very funny to see people's looks as they drove by.
Oh gosh.
It almost seems like Atlanta is turning into like maybe the new film, maybe the new Hollywood, maybe the new area for film. Like there were times where I had been walking out of Rosendale events down in town Atlanta, and they would be shooting The Walking Dead, and I would literally pass zombies on my way to my car after work. What do you agree with that maybe Atlanta is kind of the new film scene?
Yeah, I don't even think it's becoming it. I think it is it. I mean, they've made it so financially viable to do, and they've made so many incentives. They've incentivized it so much that it's nuts to me when you think about how much more money they put into it by moving everyone to Atlanta from LA and this and that, and it still ends up making them more money. Like I can't imagine how much more expensive it is to shoot something in LA.
Yeah,
because they're flying us all out there, they're putting us all up, they're giving us per diems.
Yeah,
you know, it's but it's awesome because Atlanta, I think, has such an awesome food scene, and it's so much fun to go eat there. I think the markets are so much fun there.
Oh my gosh, Atlanta food scene, at least prior to the pandemic, was probably one of my favorite food scenes.
Yeah.
Ever. Whenever you're back in Atlanta, check out Oku Sushi if you're into sushi.
Really?
That is my favorite hands down sushi place in the city.
Well, I'm going to check out the Rosendale Collective and have
Chef
Richard
we will
cook for me.
we will definitely hook up, Dan, whenever you're out there filming. I would love to catch up with you, and we'll go eat at a bunch of places and bring you over to the space. Absolutely. So we are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to kind of dive back into our next round of questions here with you, Dan. Hey, everybody, we're going to get right back to the conversation with Dan Ahdoot. Before we do, wanted to make sure that everybody knows that if you want to see the video version of the show, you can actually go to Rosendale Collective on YouTube, and you can see all of our past episodes. We've had some great guests on the show, and I got to tell you, I get so inspired. Every time I do the show, I learn something, I get inspired, and that's really what keeps me going. So anyway, let's get back to the conversation with Dan Ahdoot. Dan, you obviously with everything you've done, and I didn't even realize earlier on in your career how much you were traveling as a comedian. I didn't realize that it was that much. Is there any favorite like food cities or food experiences? Anything that you like really enjoy particularly in the United States? I mean, is there a cuisine? When you think about like Italian cuisine or even in India, all these different places around the world, there's like different kind of like little micro cuisines, but in the United States, it's almost like, completely different styles depending on what state you happen to be in. But is there any that you kind of have that are craveable to you that you think about?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me just do a macro and then micro. So macro, I think America has the most interesting food in the world right now. And I think the reason for that is that, American ingenuity, when we put our minds to something, we make it happen. We want to go to the moon, we'll go to the moon. We do what our minds like. We have you can't say no to when we're driven to do something, right?
Right.
So I think that in the early 2000s, that focus went to food, and people started. Well, before that, like there was a lot of crap food in America. People started to care about their food, and you cut to now, and everyone, there's barbecue places that they source the wood from the forest that has the right terroir and stuff like that. And people are so hyper focused on making the food amazing here, and it's gotten so good. Whereas I think in a lot of parts of the world, they're kind of hamstringed by tradition, and they have to have you go to Germany and if the beer doesn't have X, Y, or Z ingredients on it, then you get yelled out of the town. So like I think within American cuisine, though, there's a couple cuisines that make me very proud to be American that other places don't have, and one of them would be American barbecue. I love the regionality of it all. I'm very partial to North Carolina ribs. I enjoy the mustard-based sauce. And I also think another very American type of restaurant that you don't find in other places of the world is the steakhouse. I love a steakhouse. And even though I think that steak is like the easiest thing to make, and you can make one at home that tastes just as good as a steakhouse, you just have to get the good meat. But there's something about the pomp, and there's something about the environment, and the size, and they're just kind of martinis and that, and eating until you can't move anymore. Like there's something about that I just love, that is such an American thing. So yeah, I'd say those are my two.
Well, I got to bring you, I'm based here in Northern Virginia, and I come down to Atlanta pretty frequently, but I got to bring you some barbecue. And we also just got this brand new dry aging cabinet from Germany, and it is just unbelievable, the steaks that it's producing. So those are two things on my list I got to bring for you, and we'll cook it and have some.
Hell yeah.
So,
I think I've read about that one. It's like super expensive, right?
It is. But when you think about it, basically can control the humidity and the UV. There's a UV light in it, so that you also control the yield. You get much better yield out of it than you do on a lot of dry agers. And I'm going to tell you, I did like our first dry aged steak in it, and I just had like Creekstone, and I also had some local Virginia beef. And I got to tell you, I mean, the first round of steaks that we did these big prime rib. It was, I'm not exaggerating, it was like the best steak, the best bite that I have ever had. And I've had lots of steaks. I mean, the dry age flavor, sometimes dry age can be like a little overpowering. I mean, it could just be maybe a little bit too forward, and where it kind of just like overwhelms the dish. But this was like, I'm telling you, the flavor is just unbelievable. But I got to bring some down. And of course, we do a lot of smoked brisket with local shag hickory and pork shoulder and ribs. But I'll definitely have to hook you up with some of that.
Of course. By the way, Rich, have you heard of dry aged fish?
Yes, that is a huge thing, and we actually are talking with trying to get somebody on the podcast that specializes in that. There's not a lot of people that dry age fish, but you can do it in these aging cabinets.
There's a guy in LA doing it now, and like people are going nuts for it.
So what's the name of the restaurant? Do you know, or have you been there?
I haven't been there. On Instagram, he's dry aged fish guy.
Yes, that's actually the same person.
Is it the guy?
Yeah. And actually he uses the same dry aging cabinets. The dry aging cabinets that we use, they're literally called Dry Ager, and they're made in Germany. The family's been making these for years, and they're beautiful. I mean, yeah, they're expensive, but when you look at like the consistency of like what you get, it's totally worth it. But yeah, dry aged fish is becoming like a really big thing. Speaking of that, with restaurants, Dan, like a lot of people over the last year with the whole COVID situation, I mean, this has just wreaked havoc on the restaurant industry. As somebody that really loves like going out to eat, and you also kind of have a pulse with a lot of your friends in your circle, do you feel like the things are going to bounce back? And how long do you think it's going to take? Or do you think that restaurants are going to have to use like what you mentioned before, that American innovation to figure out how to kind of reimagine like a new restaurant experience. I mean, like where are your thoughts at with that now, as far as the future of just like dining in America?
I think, unfortunately, it's really depressing right now. And I think that restaurants are being thrown under the bus. You know, they're not getting the help that they need. And a lot of awesome restaurants in LA have already shut down that, you know, that would not have otherwise. You know what I mean? It's not like they were struggling before the pandemic or anything. It's a really, really unfortunate. You know, and states are dealing with it in their own ways. I think California is doing an awful job of messaging, but it's really, really sad. I do think that there's already a lot of this reshifting going on, and people are creating the restaurant experience at home in a way. You know, like a lot of restaurants are now tailoring things for people to take home and make themselves, which, you know, 11 Madison Park at home is pretty cool that they're doing that, but also it's like so sad that that's what they have to do. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, I also hope people don't become too complacent and just say, oh, wait, I can just like press a button and get, because it's so convenient to order food right now. It's crazy convenient. And I just hope we go through the same thing that they went through after the Spanish flu, like the roaring 20s. I just hope that we have like the roaring 2020s and people just go nuts and can't wait. Because it's funny, whenever people ask me, like, what's the one restaurant that you want to go to after, you know, if everything goes back to, once everything goes back to normal, I always say Balthazar in New York City. Now, I haven't been to Balthazar in New York City in like 10 years, but it's a huge, rowdy, open space that's just big and fun. And like, that is like all I crave now is like, I used to not care about the vibe of the restaurant. I was like, all I care about is the food. Now it's like, just give me another human being to sit next to.
Yeah.
And I'm there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's almost like that restaurant, it's almost like that was part of their DNA, is just the atmosphere that you get. And good Lord, I mean, it's been like how long since anybody's really experienced anything like that? I mean, in Atlanta, I mean, we used to do parties up to 6,000 people. And it's very difficult when your business plan is like at odds with like what you are actually legally allowed to do. So for catering and restaurants, I mean, that's why I was kind of curious as far as like what your thoughts were on it, just from somebody that enjoys going to restaurants. I mean, have you seen a lot of chefs out there? I mean, have you seen a lot of them being creative and trying to recalibrate and do a lot of like to go as far as like in California? Because I feel like California has been particularly hit hard with, especially like in a lot of the metros. Have you seen a lot of restaurant tours and chefs kind of trying to recalibrate and be creative and try to get their product out there? Or is it really, you know, a more difficult situation now?
There are a lot of interesting places doing a lot of interesting things. There's a sushi place downtown in LA that's doing like $250 omakases that are in this beautiful wooden box, and you know, it's just like really Japanese looking and just like awesome. But again, it's like, you know, it like, to me, whenever I see these things, it just makes me sad that this is what they have to do to survive. You know what I mean? Right. But I get it. I mean, you know, I have a friend who has a restaurant, Marvin, which is sort of a French inspired bistro, like new bistro situation in LA. And, you know, he's doing cool little homage pop-ups every week where he does an homage to like an old school Italian restaurant or an old school LA restaurant and does their cuisine, and you can order that in. But, you know, it's all tailored to delivery stuff. But because they just opened up outdoor dining last week in LA, you know, whenever we're filming this, because they might close it again by the time this airs. So yeah, I mean, you know, I feel bad for them, man. It's like, because they're getting like sort of this schizophrenic messaging of like, okay, you can open. Okay, now you can't open. Okay, great, now you can open. Right. And then they buy all the heaters, and then they're like, oh, you can't open. And then they're like, fuck, right. Just bought all these heaters. Right. And then
I think that what you're saying about that is totally true. That probably for some people is kind of like sad to see that you have to order everything online to get it delivered to your house. But at the same time, I would say that is where where you can see which business is made to make it through the pandemic. Because at the end of the day, if you reinvent yourself, if your mindset it's about winning throughout the pandemic, it means that tomorrow you're gonna be out there. Just for example, just what happened with Cobra Kai. I mean, probably they kept pushing, and now they're Netflix. They were in YouTube, but now they're Netflix, and it's a big hit worldwide. It's not just in one just country. So talking about food and everything, which one do you have any like cooking shows that you really enjoy? Let's say from Netflix.
Well, actually, yeah, during the pandemic, I was really enjoying Phil Rosendale's show, Somebody Feed Phil, because it's any show that is just a travel show right now is just like crack for me, because it's like, oh my God, remember what the world used to be like? So he's just traveling, and he's so jovial and positive and nice, and he's just like earnest and really enjoys the food. So I really enjoy that show. And then again, my new Instagram obsession is this guy, Frank Prizenzano. I can't stop gobbling up his videos as well.
I have to check him out.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, sorry, Rachel.
No.
I think that the place that you were talking in LA is the Joint, and that's we have been like watching whatever everyone is doing with dry ager, because most of the people that they're in US is not in too many places, and everyone that has the dry ager cabinets, we're trying to get connected to each other just to build something bigger for tomorrow, to teach people and everything about that.
I mean, was that a thing in Japan, the dry aged fish? Where did that come from?
I would say that, I mean, the brand that we're working with is made in Germany, but there is many people. There is a guy that has a cookbook that is about just how to butcher fish and cook it in different ways and make like so many things. The guy is from Australia, but you have people in England, you have people here in US. And I would say that now that you have social media and the internet, is you can find so many people working out different stuff, and you're gonna know tomorrow is gonna pop a new guy that is gonna be making incredible stuff.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and as far as like with aging, and then I'll let Rachel jump in here, but I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, because we could create a whole nother show just talking about like aged meats and fish and stuff. But with preserving things, it's really just kind of having the right conditions. And as you kind of get rid of some of that free water, that's one of the things that bacteria will kind of feed on. But if you can control the conditions, like the humidity, the UV light also helps quite a bit, and the temperature. I mean, you can age just about anything. Mm-hmm. But fish, I think that it is kind of a shock to people, because they just assume, the paradigm of fish has to be extremely fresh and right out of the water, and anything that's more than a week old, you don't, or even a couple of days, it's just not good. But so I think it kind of like challenges the paradigm of what we know about seafood. But we're super excited to be able to talk to him about the dry aging of fish, because there's really not a lot of people doing it. But
have you tried it, Rich?
We haven't. Right now we've been doing wild game, a lot of beef. And the beef has been just absolutely terrific. And we have 4 dry agers that we're using now. But we use it for the restaurant as well, just for the steak program. But we'll definitely keep you posted with it, because it's a fascinating topic. But dry ager is like, they make the best dry agers in the industry. I mean, and they're really hot, really popular right now.
I'm sorry to keep butting in. I'm so curious. Did you try it on wild game meat or like farmed game meat?
We've used wild game meat, venison. And when I was at the Greenbrier, a lot of times, just as part of the apprenticeship there, a lot of times they would send me out to the gun club, and the hunters in the morning would go out hunting, and whatever they brought back as an apprentice, I would clean and cook. So they would bring chuckers, pheasant, whatever. I didn't know what I was cooking. So I would just come stocked with like red wine and mushrooms and all these delicious herbs.
Oh, how cool.
And I literally, like, just for the first time last year, just went quail hunting, and I had just had a blast. So I love wild game, but I think that in the what we get here in the United States, unless you actually go out and hunt it yourself, it's very different with a lot of the farm raised places than when I was in France and eat like Paul Bocuse's restaurant, and you get like a civet of venison or wild hare, and it's just like, whoa, this has got some game flavor.
Yeah.
But yeah, just fascinating topic.
I actually killed an elk this year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and I have an elk in my freezer. Not in freezer, in the deep freeze in my garage.
I was gonna say, wow, that's a
yeah,
that's wild.
Freezer.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wind down into our final round of questions here pretty soon. Rachel, did you? I'm sorry, I know we interrupted earlier. Did you have?
No, it's totally cool. We were saying how sad it is on the impact that the pandemic has had on the restaurant industry and restaurants themselves. What is one thing that you have found positive out of 2020? What is something that you can, you're a comedian, you make people laugh. Like, what is one thing that you have found that we can look at as a positive that our listeners can kind of take from?
Well, one thing that's a positive about 2020 is that it's over. So that's cool.
Right.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I do think that another positive is that people definitely started cooking at home, and people started to learn how to cook. When there was that kind of explosion in bread baking, I thought that was so interesting to me that everyone kind of went back to the basics of like, man, I don't even know how to make bread. Like, right. I need to learn these like really essential survival skills. And I think a lot of people realize that when they do cook at home and when they do make things from scratch, that they taste a lot better. So I think that it is elevating, the tastes of a lot of people in America to fresher ingredients and better stuff. And just there's nothing negative that can come from being better at cooking and cooking at home more and depending on yourself. Right. Everyone's gonna eat healthier that way. So right. I think that's a really good thing that came out of it.
Definitely.
Then quick question. What is your favorite food to cook and eat? And what do you have in your fridge besides milk?
Ooh. My favorite food to cook is I made a duck breast the other night that I love so much. Duck breast is so fun to me.
Love duck breast.
That's amazing.
Because you don't have to add any fat. It's like a one-stop shop. You just take the thing, it cooks in its own fat. It's so easy and it's so delicious. And it's like, it always tastes like you're eating at a restaurant and it's so easy to make. I don't know. I just love cooking with duck.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And in my fridge right now, I have some leftover fried chicken from
yesterday.
From yesterday. Yeah. So my friend who's got that restaurant in LA, Marvin, he was doing like a Super Bowl fried chicken dinner thing. And it was like for 8. And I was like, can you make this for 1? He was like, yeah, sure. Come by, you lonely loser. So I went and got my little bag of fried chicken and ate that while I watched the Super Bowl.
Have you fired up the Traeger yet?
Yeah, I cook with the Traeger all the time. I love it. It's so much fun to smoke. I mean, if you like smoked flavor, it's just like, it's also so easy. Like I would love to be, Rich, I'm sure you're like a barbecue pit master and you can use, you can grab a piece of coal and touch it in your hand and be like, nope, needs a little more time. I don't have the bandwidth. So I'm like, I just need a little, my little set it and forget it, smoker. So for me, it's really,
they're great. They're great. Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of chefs using them and people are really happy with them. I mean, they're fantastic and they're consistent too.
Yeah.
Have you cooked any sous vide much? I mean, that's obviously been like very popular in the last several years and actually probably even more home cooks using them than even restaurants practically.
I haven't. And I think, I'm kind of anti-sous vide. I'm a little anti-sous vide. I know. Shots fired.
No. That's. I think there are a lot of. Well, I think it's like overused by a lot of people. Like, and I can tell you from somebody that would go and judge a lot of culinary competitions. Sometimes it was a little bit it was maybe disappointing to maybe see just people like putting everything in a bag, especially if they're coming out of culinary school. And it's like, this should be used as a tool like anything else in your kitchen. You know, you have your grill and your broiler and your saute pan. It's just another tool. But it should be something that you build your cuisine on, unless it's like that's your concept, you know. And I think a lot of times maybe people just haven't had good sous vide. You know, they've had people just cooking sous vide. I like it when someone doesn't even know that something was sous vide. They're just like, oh my God, these are just the most amazing short ribs I've ever had. It's like, oh, well, they just cooked for the last 2 days at 62.5 degrees Celsius. Really, you know?
Yes. I will say, first of all, that's very interesting to think about it like that it's a tool and people out of culinary school might overuse it, because I liken it to cursing in stand-up comedy. Like beginning stand-ups just curse every other word. And it's like, no, man, you just got to be a little, you know, use it when you need to. It's like seasoning. You don't want to oversalt it.
That's a great analogy.
Look, I'll say this. I just think that there's things that I've had sous vide that blew me away. Like sous vide eggs, I think are so cool. And like sous vide chicken, I think is delicious.
Yes.
But I don't know, a lot of people's obsession with the uniformity of the cook all the way through. Like I like when a steak has a sear on the outside and then there's like well done right under the skin, and then it's like goes down to, you know, rare in the middle, and then, you know, I kind of like going through the layers of that, like an ecological cross section of a mountain. Like I enjoy that. I think you're right. Maybe there was a period of time where everyone was doing it on everything, and I was like, you know, everything kind of tastes like what they would serve in a nursing home. It's just like soft on my gums.
Yeah.
So I like having a little bit of that, you know, the texture contrast.
Right.
Well, you know, for me, that's one of the ways I kind of gravitated even toward also liking barbecue. Because I mean, I do a lot of obviously high-end food over the years, but one of the things that's interesting about barbecue is that it's also cooking at kind of low temperatures, and some of the same things are happening, like the denaturing of protein and collagen, and you know, getting it just the right texture. But it's happening in a different environment, different conditions. But the temperatures are kind of low and slow, and you know, I kind of like a lot of those different qualities. But I know exactly what you mean. People kind of overuse it, and it should be used as a tool. I know my last question for you, Dan, because I know we're kind of up here on the hour. And again, thanks so much for your time today. Really, this was really enjoyable. Are you
kidding me? Thank you. Just to be able to nerd out with cooking nerds is like my favorite thing in life. I could
awesome.
Do another hour.
We really enjoyed it. And I'm going to let Rachel and Chris obviously let them have some questions as well. But my last question is just to know where people can find out more about you and your current projects, whether that's website, social media.
Yeah, so my website, my Instagram, and my Twitter are all at StandUpDan. The website is standupdan.com, but at StandUpDan is the best way to get a hold of me.
And the podcast is there any particular platforms that's on?
Yeah, the podcast is called Green Eggs and Dan. And it is anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can listen to it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I definitely highly recommend it. I mean, I've really enjoyed it, and I think you're doing a terrific job with it too.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure to reconnect.
It is. We will, like I said, we'll definitely hook you up with some brisket and some of those dry aged steaks next time I'm in Atlanta.
I love it.
All right, my final question for you, Dan, is what is one ingredient that is a staple in your house you will die if it's not in your house?
Okay, I love this question. I would say these days it's toragashi. Am I saying?
Oh my gosh, good answer.
Nice.
Wow,
awesome.
Good answer.
It is my favorite thing. I guess chefs are all listening to this, but for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a Japanese spice blend that, and the one that I have now is a yuzu toragashi, and it is like,
sounds good.
Oh my God, I put it on my cereal.
Oh my God.
So good.
That's amazing.
So good, yeah.
So my last question is going to be, LA and Atlanta, they don't count for as an answer for this question. Are you planning to travel anywhere this 2021? And is there any place that you can wait to see again? For example, I don't know, maybe you can come to South Florida and visit Rachel and myself, or you can go to Virginia and check out the restaurant that we have over there that is about barbecue. And Rich can give you a great tour about that.
I mean, yeah, that sounds like should be number one on my list. I am actually, we are doing a Comedians of Cobra Kai comedy tour starting in, I think, June or July. So I will be traveling a little bit around. I do think we have a show in Northern Virginia, Rich. So,
oh, cool.
Hey, you have to come to the show. And
oh, man, I would love to. I would love to. Yeah. Let me know about when that is. Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, we have the restaurant out here, but we have a state-of-the-art culinary lab that's about 15 minutes from Washington Dulles Airport. So I could give you like the full tour. We could go have some barbecue over at Roots and then bring you over to the culinary lab. Is like the Willy Wonka of like kitchens. I mean, we can make you some crazy cocktails with a rotary evaporator and then walk over to the dry ager and then the blast freezer. I mean, we got all kinds of crazy stuff. So
I swear, I don't know if you're just saying this because we're on the air. And then
no, I'm serious, man. I'm serious.
Yeah, screw you. Well, I don't have time for you. But I will pad my trip.
No, I'm serious, man.
I will pad my trip by one day so that
I'm totally 100% serious, man. Absolutely.
Awesome. I love it.
Well, great, Dan. Thank you very much for giving us your time today. Really enjoyed this conversation. I mean, you're a joy to be able to hang out with, and look forward to seeing you in person very soon.
Hell yeah, I will.
Thank you.
And by the way, if Rich reneges on this, I will put him on blast. Everyone, you're following me on Stand Up Dan. I will put him on blast.
You won't have to do that.
This is my favorite. Like, talking about food is literally my favorite thing in the world. So
we can tell.
Awesome.
Sounds good. All right, Dan. Thanks so much, man. Take care. We'll see you soon.
You got it, guys.
Hey, everybody. Want to say thank you to Dan Ahdoot. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with him. And also be sure to check out his podcast, Green Eggs and Dan. You're going to love it. If you love food and just great conversation, check it out. It's an awesome podcast. Also, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. We've got some new sponsors for 2021. Art Flame, you all know that I've been using them for years. I mean, just the coolest grills. I mean, if you want a fun way to cook outside, whether it's at your home or in your restaurant or club, and also to have the plethora of accessories and tools, everything from rotisserie to pizza attachments. I mean, it's just unbelievable. They've also got a really cool new side table with the accessory of a cutting board that they've just added. So check out their website. I just love their product. I mean, they're well made and they look beautiful. And also another new partner that we have this year is Dry Ager. If you love the quality of like restaurant dry aged steaks, then you can now do this in your own home, or you can bring this into your restaurant or into your club. But Dry Ager makes the best and just most amazing dry aging cabinets. And also they are so well built, they're so well crafted, but they also have a UV light in them. You can control the humidity, the temperature, and really dial in the process of dry aging meat. We are just having a blast with ours, and we're actually getting ready to start to cure some hams as well. And also want to say thank you to Comey. It is the recipe and menu management software that we use to run our organization. It really helps kind of put the entire team on the same page. And I also use it for my home recipes to catalog all the cooking I do with my family and my kids. Also, Verlasso Salmon. Verlasso Salmon is farm-raised, sustainable salmon out of Chile. Always fresh, always consistent, great flavor. I cook it a lot at home, but we also use it on all of our restaurant menus, and it's really just a great product. And want to say thank you to all of you. So want to say thanks, continue to like and subscribe to the show, and we'll be back with more exciting guests next week. So thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.